Good evening, citizens. My name is Ban Shattersong, former captain of the Bloody Hands Mercenary Company, and this episode is a short one. Firstly, a PSA. Oliver Facey's photos are now out on Facebook. If you haven't seen them, go and check them out. We've got Navarre on the battlefield on the Saturday, and we look epic. Fantastic set of photos. They look really, really good. If you see yourself in any of them, then do consider giving Ollie a little purchase. Subscribe to his Patreon. I believe he's got one, and also I think you can actually buy the images direct off his website. So go and check those out. The second part of this is the Navarri battlefield drip. How do you look striking in these kind of photos? How do you look eye-grabbing to your friends, your enemies, and of course your fashionable rivals? And part of that is, of course, looking on brief, and then the other part of that is looking, I think I've said striking already, but making your costume stand out, making yourself stand out. So I thought I'd go through some of the costume brief for Navarre for this episode. We cover the basics of how to dress yourself and my personal tips on where to get stuff and what is the easiest effect to get and what can be perhaps a bit harder. But then also, actually, having gone through a couple of the photos, I've noticed a few things that have caught my eye that aren't necessarily in the guide, but look A, Navari, and B, very, very good. And then finally, we'll touch off with some, I guess, almost outfit design hints and tips. Very basic stuff, but you'll end off there and hopefully over this long dark before we get back to episodes. Well, not episodes, events next year. Uh, we've got some time, hopefully, to have a look at our kit, make some alterations, and whether you get some frankly you get some felt tips and draw some designs onto your suede, or you sew yourself something entirely new. It's up to you. Kit is entirely aspirational at Empire, so it's not about being good, it's about making it better. And it's a really lovely way of building up some really cool kit. So anyway, I digress. Let's begin with the Navari general look overview. So you might well be aware that Navari are it's again not law accurate to call Navari wood elves, forest people, naturists, that kind of description. However, for this episode, I'm going to breeze all over that and just use common terminology, just to make it understandable from a mind's eye point of view. So the Navarre look and draw heavily upon the forests for their inspiration. So primarily you've got greens, browns, and occasional splashes of dark autumnal red or yellow. Often the outfits themselves are very practical, so mostly coming from hunting, so leather and fur, face paint, tattoos, and brands which are literal brands from a poker from a hot fire, especially on the face and around the eyes. The way Navarre mark their oaths and other important commitments is with brands, tattoos, and scars. So if you're doing your makeup and you're trying to make yourself look fierce and put some unique symbols on yourself, try and come up with a little bit of backstory behind them. Just a sentence, and if people say, "Oh, I love it," you can say, "Oh, yes, it was that time I uh, literally pulled the leg off a boar with my bare hands," kind of thing, and that's why I've got a boar's leg tattooed onto my thigh, that kind of thing. You can also adorn yourself with certain embroidered things, beads, feathers, fetishes, and other accessories. And it's also common to weave items into your hair as well. I don't have any hair, so perhaps that might be a bit of a problem. But providing you, dear listeners, don't get cancer and all that other shit, you'll have something to weave into, so you should be good. The color palette itself, again, go check out the wiki. I'm not reading word for word, but I'm paraphrasing. It does have a really good color palette on there. It is mainly greens, and when you think Rangers of Ithilien from Lord of the Rings or Wood Elves in pretty much any fantasy setting, they're quite drab and muted greens, foresty browns, maybe blacks in there, or I think in our case a very very dark brown or a very very dark green, so to say, not black black. However, of course, accent colors go nuts. This is just a guide, and it's not a set of rules. However, what I feel, in my personal opinion, is that some of the things like the oranges, the yellows, the more autumnal colours get left out a little bit, and actually they can look really, really striking, especially with how they contrast with, let's say, your standard green and brown kit. Things like sashes, pins, buttons, decorations, weaving into your hair, for example, could all look really good. And then on top of that, a couple of things I've seen on the pictures released by Oliver today is some Navarri had sort of like strips of cloth just attached to the underside of their belts, so dangling down. Literally just imagine it almost like a hula skirt, but instead of reeds, you've got scraps of different coloured fabrics and those kind of autumnal and green colours. And it looks fantastic. A really good way of adding a splash of colour to your outfit, but at the same time keeping it within the colour brief. It was really nice to see and a really cool touch. Um, you know, your arm wraps as well, your leg wraps if you wear those, a headband, an armband, scarves. Those are great for getting a splash of colour into your outfit that's easily, removable because I don't want to paint my armour yellow, for example. But at the same time, add some variety to your palette. The materials it states here are primarily leather, fur, layers, some layers of cotton, linen, or wool. Fine fabrics such as velvet or silk are rare. Those kind of sit with the league, perhaps dawn, for example. However, it says, saying here leather and fur, that's for day-to-day dress. When it comes to armor, chainmail is absolutely acceptable and quite encouraged. Um, you do get different colors for chainmail. Obviously you get silver, but you can get black sometimes. I'm a little bit conflicted personally on which one is the better Navarri color. And what I mean by that is black is of course, a bit more drab, not as shiny or reflective in the forest environments we're in. But at the same time, having silver chain brings some brightness to an outfit that might otherwise be quite drab with all the browns and greens going on. And it can be a really nice contrast again when you've got your brown leather braces, your brown chest armor, but then some chain poking out underneath. Can look really cool. And also with chain, you can weave things into it as well. One of the Navarri generals has a fantastic set of ring mail that has vines woven into it as well as a chest piece body armor, and it looks chef's kiss. It looks fantastic. But anyway, I digress from the material side. Standard clothing, it's very, very variable. Anything practical, serviceable, and well worn. We're practical people in the Navarre, and our clothes do reflect this. Um, essentially, if you can go for a 5 kilometer jog in it, it's good to go. It doesn't mean that we can't be fancy or wear nice things, but it's very unlikely you'll get a sort of Navarri in a full velvet dress with I've forgotten the name of those, either Edwardian, was it Victorian metal cages, but sometimes sort of ladies of the house would wear to balls. You won't see us going around in anything like that. But if there's a formal occasion, you will see our better outfits come out. They might be more nicely embroidered, have brighter colours, perhaps. Same palette, but a little bit brighter. A bit more jewellery, that kind of thing. But fundamentally, Navarre clothes are practical. It doesn't mean, though, that they're scraps or rags or anything like that. If you're thinking of the ideal outfit, it's something you can spend a while in the wilderness and it won't tear, fray, be pulled apart by thorns or branches as you run past them. And it's a tough material that can survive and also be warm, practical, and stay together. In terms of decoration, the the Navarri slant is typically towards fur trims, decoration in natural materials, and a natural colour palette as well. So having flowers, for example, embroidered onto a fancy dress could be a Navarri way of expressing yourself at a more fancy ball, for example, if those damn Dornish invite you along for a party. There's also a note here around more remote Navarre adapting to their environment and having a tougher outlook and tougher outfits. But again, this comes under the umbrella of practical clothing, and of course we do change our clothes based on the environment. Shoes, I'm not really whatever. Yeah, in theory at Empire, your costume ends at the ankle, as long as you're not wearing white shoes or sneakers, that kind of thing. But frankly, you shouldn't be because you want something sturdy to support your ankles, like boots or walking boots. And because those are often in sort of drab colors like browns or blacks, you're fine. If you really want a top tip that I've been using for years, and everyone keeps thinking I have real leather boots. I don't. I have a set of £2 pirate boot toppers from Amazon, and they have lasted me the best part of 6 years now. They've got dirty and dusty. I don't clean them because it's that kind of fake plasticky leather effect. But now they've got dusted and dirty. It actually looks kind of real. A few holes have torn in them, and they look fantastic. And they literally you put your trousers on, put your socks on, put these boot toppers on, slide it up halfway around your knee, put your boot on, and then slide them down over the laces, and it makes it look like a proper boot. My best piece of advice for your IC footwear, because otherwise you're buying actual IC boots, which can be beautiful things made of suede, but they're not as practical or perhaps comfortable as your modern equivalent. Okay, tattoos. So tattoos are entirely up to you. I'm not going to give you any advice, um, bar the usual marking of thorns, brands, and the runes, the magical runes of the Empire, are all good places to start. But your tattoos can be different to your war paint, for example. So you have tattoos day to day, and then when you go to battle, you've got some big marks on your face. My character Lindir, he's a thorn, so he's in theory always ready for battle. So I just wear war paint all the time, and because I'm too lazy, frankly, to do intricate knot work or anything on my face, I just put my war paint on, and that's my defining feature. The way, to take away from Empire for a second, the way humans look at each other, our face, we look at someone's face first. It's the most telling thing about somebody. It's built into our biology. And if you want to be quite striking, then having something quite elaborate on your face, quite bright, thick or intricate as well, can really draw attention to you. So in my case, I use sort of black and red lines, go pretty much from the top of my head right down to almost in line of my mouth in some cases. It breaks my face in half at an angle, and it looks very unnatural, and as a result, people stare, which is kind of the point. But you could do the same with some knot work that goes around your eyes and makes one look larger than the other, for example. I saw one really good set years ago where this player, she had a sort of an almost straight line, but it was very subtly a curve, had a subtle curve and thorns to it, directly down the middle of her face, and it gave that illusion of sort of perfect symmetry, and it was really, really interesting to look at, and that was quite cool. And then I'd say the classic thing is putting some war paint like around your eyes, kind of like eyeliner, but really thickening it up. That can look very striking as well. But yeah, otherwise, go nuts. It really is. Use your face as a canvas, and it is quite fun. What you can do is if you've got friends with a face paint set or some snaz pots, just ask someone to make something up for you. If it's your first time, or even nowadays, if you've got a single mark on your cheek but you want to spice it up, let someone else have free will and go to town on you, and you might be pleasantly surprised. Arms and armor. Right, so this is where my opinion piece comes in. So the stereotypical Navarri armor is leather, and let's call it medium because you've got sort of scale mail, for example, would be our, I guess, heavy infantry equivalent. However, in day-to-day anvil, modern Empire LARP, if you want to call it that, there's lots of Navarre wearing chainmail, as I mentioned, so really go nuts. What can look very effective is chainmail with some leather decorations over the top. So, for example, the gorget, some shoulder pads, maybe a large belt, that kind of thing. And what you could even do is, like I said earlier, weave things into that chainmail as well to make it look a bit more Navari. But I find quite often having that shiny contrast is a great way to bring out some depth in your costume. If you're looking at the lines, the lines and the closures of your armor often go diagonally across the body rather than vertically. So, for example, if you have a set of a brigandine, which is a leather plated coat, if it buttons up down the middle, that's pretty standard, so don't worry about it. But in theory, if Navari made them, it would be you'd button it up from either on the sides, so just underneath your armpit, or you'd take it from, let's say, your left hand hip to your right hand shoulder as a almost like a sash across your body. The idea there is to just give yourself some asymmetry, and that's pretty Navarri. Shields and weapons, do what you want. The classic Navarri weapon is a spear with maybe some thorns on the end and a more natural or put together look than, let's say, a formal league pike. But at the same time, use your swords, two-handed weapons, whatever. Navarri are practical people. You will pick up and use whichever weapon you can wield, which you want to wield, and IC you can afford as well. Killing enemies of the Empire is a good thing. Go nuts. Mage implements, not my area of expertise. Uh, I think same as before. If you can get some more wooden-based ones, that's fine. But a Navarri who's been to Urizen, for example, and picked up a fine metal wad or wand, rod, or staff, and it's really nice, of course you'd use it. So go nuts. Now on the armor side, the other top tips I had from looking at some of the pictures that Ollie put out. One was jackets. So a sleeveless leather jacket over the top of your chainmail. So you've got almost like a stripe from the bottom of your chin to your belly button of chainmail, maybe about a few inches wide than the jacket itself, and then your chainmail sleeves poking out the sides of that as well, and that breaks up the chainmail very nicely. And also because it's a sleeveless jacket, it makes you look Navarri. And then on top of that, it's a chance to get another spot color. I'll explain what that means later, but essentially a chance to get a splash of color you ordinarily wouldn't have on your outfit onto your outfit. And a few good examples here. Some are literal patchwork leather, so you've got some different tones in there. It's quite dark, keeps the overall costume in a sort of a muted. Not sure of the right word for the overall effect. I was going to say visage, but that's not the right word. The overall look is essentially kept quite dark. But then another example I've got in front of me, it's quite pale. It's almost like an autumnal yellow or orange, but it's got some lovely embroidery along the collar and down the front, and it's still very clearly a Navarri costume. It looks fantastic. They've got the classic barbed spear as well and face paint on, but bring that orange into it makes them really stand out in this particular photo. And compared to the other people around them who are wearing predominantly brown and drab outfits, they really stand out. The other top tips, scarves I mentioned before. I've seen plenty of scarves of different colours in. Some are like a very pale, almost lime green, it must be said, but I like it. It's got enough contrast between the different areas of the outfit. And then yeah, we've got a few more here that have gone into these sort of more autumnal colours, like a very, very pale brown. I mentioned the tasses, so the strips of fabric earlier, sort of clipped onto a belt. You can have those tasses as well, attached pretty much anywhere on your body. But another cool thing I've seen is a like a semi-leather war skirt. So it's not a full skirt like down to your knee or anything. It's probably maybe halfway down your thigh, but it's just. I mean, sometimes you can get just a scrap of hide, belt it together, and use this as an underlayer. But if not, you can get scraps, make yourself a scrappy skirt, and put that on over the top of your base layers, like your tunic and your trousers. But then put your armor on top of that, and it's kind of like a leather skirt gambeson kind of thing. And again, because you're using different colors, you can break up your trousers, which are one long, think of it like one long sausage of color, and it breaks them up into different shapes and places, and adds another layer to your outfit, which is very important for having a really realistic and gritty looking costume. I've seen a few sashes as well here. One's just dangled across the belt, and of course you do get others wrapped around people's necks or diagonally across their bodies. Those are looking really good as some of the more unusual Navarre colours. So a red one, for example, I've seen a really nice looking scarlet sash, very striking, makes that player stand out on the field, but they're still fundamentally Navarri. Look fantastic. And I do see a bandana as well. Yeah, it's a green bandana with white leaves on it. So they don't look Rambo, it does look suitable. And it makes their head look different. Sorry, look different. But the difference is when you're looking at people's faces, of course, you capture the face paint and the like. When their head is broken up into different sections, so you've got the face, a bandana, and the top of their head. Again, it naturally draws your eyes towards them, and it looks fantastic. The I mentioned spot colors a little bit earlier. So this is actually coming from Warhammer painting of all things, so it's probably not good advice, but I feel like it's at least partially appropriate in this bullshit episode, and perhaps even for your costumes. And that is the idea is you've got two maybe three primary colors on the model, but then you pick a spot color which is highly contrasting to the other two. So, for example, an Imperial Guardsman, if any of you are playing Dark Tide, I fucking love it at the moment. You've got, let's say, brown or khaki fatigues, and then with green body armor over the top. To contrast with that, you'd pick something like a bright red or maybe perhaps a bright blue, to accent a few of the areas of the model. And the idea is you try and make a triangle on them, so it might be one on each shoulder, let's say a singular red armor plate or their unit number written in red on each shoulder, and then on top with a red bandana, for example, or perhaps a red belt or a red belt buckle, that kind of thing. One of their knee pads is painted a different color, or it has a white stripe on it with a red design in the middle, that kind of thing. And the idea of spot colors is you pick something contrasting, get at least three areas of your model, or in this case your LARP costume, that display it. Just small little touches. Think of it like the size of a wristwatch, like the size of their face, that kind of thing. Just to have a spot color, and there's something about it that really makes a costume and a model pop, and I think it would look great in a Navarri sense. I used to do it a lot with Ban, with gold. So I had a gold necklace and then gold bracelets on each wrist, and it looked blingy, and it was nice just to break up that otherwise quite drab green and brown outfits. A word of caution, I suppose. It's not really caution. I think it's just if it's only caution if you're trying to sort of make a contrasting, striking outfit that looks good. And what I mean by that is versus if you wanted to go like a scout, like a real deep, like a deep behind enemy lines kind of ranger, then of course you're going to hit blacks, dark browns, dark greens, camouflage yourself in woodlands, that kind of look. Then sure, go for that. But if you're trying to sneak yourself onto the camera, I suppose, or just stand out from the crowd, then try not to stick with too much of one color. So if you have brown trousers and a brown tunic and then dark brown leather armor, you can look like Wintermark, and it's not meant as an insult, but in some circles it is. And then secondly is that there's just a body shape, and it's hard to see any depth in the costume that you have. It's hard to, um, when your eyes are looking at a human being, it's hard to like tell the difference from the arms, the bodies, and they just become an amorphous shape. And if you want to really stand out, you need to break your body up into lots of different shapes, and it'll look fantastic. So have a green tunic, for example, with brown trousers, and then black armor can work, to be fair. But then you might want to pick something quite light, so you could go with brown armor and then swap your trousers out for an autumnal yellow, but then have quite high dark brown boots, so you've still got an overall browny green palette, but then there's a yellow splash in there that looks great, or perhaps have one bracer in red, one bracer in green, so you've got some asymmetry in there as well. Sections of patching look really, really good on clothes. So if you can just pick up a needle and thread from a shop, they're I mean, barely a couple pounds now, probably just a pound, um, and just sew a patch of random colored material onto your shirt. Say on like an elbow pad, for example, but anything between the elbow and the shoulder on the outside of it, so sort of between your tricep and your bicep, that's going to be visible to everyone all the time. So any colors you put there, any kind of details, will get noticed very quickly, as opposed to putting a patch on the back of your thigh, for example, which is probably not going to be seen too often. Another high visibility area would be your knees. They're quite easy to see. And then if you want to, do a patch on the bum, on the seat of your trousers, or perhaps right at the bottom of your tunic. Let's say you've been sliding on your ass down, rock faces, that kind of thing, to get away from Drew scouts. You could argue you've patched it up there. And then even from behind, you can look really interesting and dynamic. So yeah, those are my rambling top tips on the Navarri armor side of thing. A little bit about the color. I guess this is secondhand knowledge, so forgive me if I'm incorrect. But another part of design is the overall shape of your outfit as well, and giving those impressions to just to people when they just glanced at you. So if you want to make someone look hench or buff or large or heavily armored, um, you can of course just encase yourself in armor, and you'll probably look that way. But the way to do it more, I guess, more armor effectively with less armor, perhaps, or to perhaps have more striking is to make some real, again, contrast between different areas of your body. So if I want to look large, I will put armor on my shoulders, armor on the top of my thighs, and keep it basically on my trunk, on my torso to buff out my chest and my shoulders. But then I would leave my arms almost bare, so that they look quite skinny. And then that way you've got skinny arms, skinny legs, and then big, large torso. And because the human that looks at you will go, ah, large torso, must be strong, kind of thing. You can have that kind of intimidating look and heavily armored look without having to entirely encase yourself in steel. The alternatives are there. You can just armor all of your arms and keep your chest quite small, so it makes yourself look like you've got big arms and a normal sized chest. But the point is to make one part of your body look bigger and different. The key areas for that are your shoulders and your arms. Everyone's got a torso. Everyone's got different sized torsos as well, so it's I think a little bit harder to get the contrast there. And then your legs as well, hidden behind a shield, hidden behind a sword, or frankly not even looked at. So looking at the top half of your body, like your face, helmets, shoulders, and arms, the things that things that people see all the time, and I'd say your primary areas to put some details, some decals, or indeed buff out if you want to go for a certain type of heavily armored look. Okay, I said that would be a short episode. We're going up to 27 minutes, and I don't want to be a liar, but I think I have lied to you and gone over my original. It felt like 15 minutes in my head. So, I do apologise. Final note, final note, helmets. Now, this is something I really want to get into, and I haven't done yet. Navarri helmets, and in general, helmets at LARP. Thanks to PD's fucking awesome and I think unparalleled combat rules, helmets aren't really essential because you're not encouraged to aim for the head. If you do, you don't take any calls there at all. You just take a hit point, and that's it. So aiming for the head isn't necessary, and as a result, wearing a helmet isn't as important as it would be on a real battlefield, for example. So, because helmets are stifling, people don't wear them. However, they do look so fucking cool. And in addition to that, the rules are pretty good for helmets. So, if you to get coverage of armor, let's say I'm wearing medium armor, I need to cover my torso and one other location. That's typically all of my arms, all of my legs, or half of my arms and half my legs. Like a van brace and then greaves on your legs, or any combination as of which where half your limbs are covered. Or you can wear a helmet and you don't need any other armor anywhere else, just helmet and body. And I think that's really cool because you won't get let's say if you get cleaved on the arm and of course there's no armor there, you'll still lose the arm. However, you will get the hit points thanks to the helmet. So if you're looking to keep your armor quite light, rather than buying van braces and greaves, you could actually just go for a helmet. And a couple I've seen, and there's a very famous member of the Dog's End bar that wears like a dog's head helmet that looks awesome, fully enclosed, and the visor is a dog's nose. And another one I've seen in Ollie's photos is it's almost like a leather mask, but it's got fur around it to make it comfortable. It's got two antlers coming out the top. I'm going to assume the player is either lineaged or just a badass because they look great. And then the helmet itself is patches of leather, but riveted together with some designs on them in brown with some lovely staining on it, and it looks phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. This player's got sort of long red hair as well, so it's very, very striking. And like we said earlier a couple times, anything on your face is very disconcerting to another human being, and it draws a lot of attention. So if you can go for a really cool helmet with some little antlers on, or perhaps some cool designs, 100% go for it. I think one of the captains of the Dread Shields, if any of you listeners are familiar with them, they're essentially a unit in Navarre. Um, that player also has a almost like a half mask that they wear, and I'm not sure it's because they're a briar or because they are a again a badass who needs to armor their face because they keep taking slashes to it. Oh, there we go. I've just found a picture of them. It looks like, yeah, it's a leather mask with so it's kind of, imagine like a leather bandana, but then there's another whole strap of it that comes over their eye with a hole for the eye itself, and then the strap falls off one side of their face. It looks great because it's asymmetric. It's breaking up their facial shape, and it's got some really cool thick stitches in there, different plates of leather to reinforce it in areas, and mwah, it looks fantastic. So yeah, there we go. That's my final lengthy point. Helmets are cool. If you want any help with your kit, always ask on the Discord. People are really friendly there, and they'll give you tips. And frankly, half the time they'll offer to help you out directly as well. Um, you know, get your kit, try stuff on in the mirror. You've got loads of time till the next event. Enjoy it. It really is your own fashion show. And fingers crossed, I see you on the battlefield, and also see you in the photos that come out a little bit later on. But until then, enjoy your evenings, enjoy your fashion show, and most importantly, enjoy kicking Druge ass.